We're going to give everybody a little while to get into the room, and then we'll get started in another minute or so. Okay, guys?
Mary, your birds sound very nice.
My birds. Do you have birds?
I think they're Molly's birds.
Oh, it's possible it's my birds.
Thanks for bringing some birds, Molly.
Yeah, let me know if you get.
So it's 7:02. We'll go ahead and kick this off. Welcome to everybody who's joined us or who's in the process of joining us. My name is Mary Russ Grooms, and I'm the 30th Reunion Engagement Chair for this year's reunion at Davidson. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to welcome each of you to the class of 1992 sponsored Back to School class featuring Mary Faith Mount Coors, Tom Coors, and Molly Fitzgerald. Before we get started, I want to go over a few Zoom keeping items. First, all participants have been muted and will remain muted throughout the event. If you are comfortable and have not already changed your Zoom name to your first and last name, we ask that you do that now. You can rename yourself by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen, hovering your mouse over your name, and then clicking the More button. Feel free to add your Davidson class year if you have one as well. The chat feature is available. If you have questions for any of the panelists during the presentation, please send them through the chat to Grace Ward or myself. We will share them with the panelists during the formal question and answer period. Please note that the panelists will not be monitoring the chat, so please do not send questions directly to them. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the program. For optimal viewing, we recommend hovering your mouse at the top of the black Zoom screen and you will see View pop up. If you click on that and then select side-by-side speaker view, you will be able to see all of the speakers in the center of your screen and the speaker to the right. In addition, we have enabled live auto transcription for this program. If you would like to enable this on your end, you can hover over the live transcription button on your screen and subtitles should appear. Please note that the captions are not always accurate, so we ask for your grace and understanding with this. If you have a tech issue, please send a chat to Stephanie Glazer. Now moving on to the program, very excited to introduce our guests this evening, three of my favorite people. Tom Coors is the Director of Lands, North American Policy and Government Relations at the Nature Conservancy. Tom works on domestic and international lands policy and funding priorities. He successfully led TNC's effort on the Land and Water Conservation Fund and was a key player in the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act in 2020. Tom has a BS in biology from Davidson, an administrative law certificate from the University of Paris Jean Monnet School of Law, and holds a JD from Vermont Law School. Welcome, Tom. Dr. Mary Faith Mount Coors is the founder and president of Ed Intersect LLC. She leads and manages the firm, which is a certified woman-owned small business and provides technical leadership across the thematic and functional areas of Ed Intersect, including in monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning processes, gender and inclusion, and teaching and learning from early childhood through higher education. Dr. Mount Coors has worked on literacy programs, education strategy, teacher training, and curriculum development in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and the Pacific. She holds a BA in religion with a concentration in international studies from Davidson College and a Master's of Arts in French from NYU, as well as a PhD in education from UNC Chapel Hill and a certificate in global health from UNC Chapel Hill. She is a native English speaker, but she also speaks French, Spanish, and basic Kiswahili and Fon. Dr. Molly Fitzgerald, welcome Mary Faith, sorry. Dr. Molly Fitzgerald leads Juxta Health LLC, founded with a vision for health equity through the design of more inclusive health services programs, and policies. Her current work includes health and human rights research in the context of refugee asylum, human-centered service design, and research geared towards improved sexual and reproductive health access. Prior to starting her own company, Dr. Fitzgerald led organization-wide innovation and facilitated youth-led approaches to complex global humanitarian challenges around education, child protection, and health. She holds a Master of Public Health with a focus on refugee studies and health and human rights from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and she holds a Doctor of Public Health from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. These folks, welcome Molly. These folks are so impressive, you guys, and their full bios are available in the chat in the Zoom chat if you'd like to see a little more information about what they've been up to for the last 30 years. But I would like to stop talking and let them start their conversation because they just are involved in so many interesting projects. So to start things off, obviously each of you has found a way to pursue your passions as part of your professions, and each of you is working very diligently to basically make the world a better place, and we appreciate that so much. When you're trying to explain to people what it is you do for a living, Tom, what is your elevator speech when someone asks you what you do for a living?
So I say that I'm a lobbyist. I lobby for the Nature Conservancy. I'm a gumshoe walking back, slapping, hand grabbing guy that roams the walls or the halls of state legislatures and also Congress, but also at the UN. So I advocate for money and policy for natural lands and conservation domestically and internationally.
That's incredible. Mary Faith, do you have a story that you can tell people that sort of encapsulates what it is that you do in your work?
Yes, Mary, I do. And we're coming to you from the world headquarters of Ed Intersect LLC in Carrboro, North Carolina, on Weaver Street. So you can visit us sometime here when you're in the Chapel Hill, Carrboro area. One little anecdote that captures some of the way we work as well as the kind of work we do is we're currently working on a project in Tajikistan, and we work with the Ministry of Education there. And after a really pretty intense set of days developing research tools together with them, I was telling their lead person goodbye, and we had translators helping us have a last conversation. And what was translated to me stuck with me. He said, "You came with your tools and we made them ours." And for me, that captured the participatory and exchange element of what we do. We're not bringing people things and having them accept something from our context. We are working with people within their context to integrate different solutions or pieces of solutions into their education systems, and helping to understand what the needs are and work towards changes that might need to happen. So when I need to do an elevator speech, sometimes I get a little too technical in my talk. And I think that anecdote captures a bit of the essence of the type of work that we do. We want to bring to people empowerment and inclusion within education systems all around the world through education. I mean, that our sector of action is education, but we're bringing people things that they are using within their own systems. And so we're not really the experts. We're just there to help them facilitate the use of different potential solutions within their system. So Molly, does that resonate with some of what you are working on?
That absolutely resonates. And I love being here with you and Tom because I feel like health, of course, I'm biased, so I see you as falling under health, education, and climate are leading, part of health. But I do sort of really see health in that way, and I see what I do as is really. I'm very focused on sort of the enabling environment for health, and the part that you just mentioned about the context really resonates with me as well, because I am very concerned about trying to understand a context. It doesn't matter if it's in my own backyard, across the street, or in somewhere in very a remote place in Africa. I know that whoever is there is the expert of that context, and there's no program, service, policy, or law that can be designed. There's no solution that can even be solved without whoever is the expert of the context helping to shape the problem, helping to shape the measurement and the outcomes that are actually desired. So that's what I focus a lot on. And so find a lot of times in health, for example, when working with, say, adolescent girls, they're concerned about, say, for example, saying HIV negative or unintended pregnancies. They might just actually really be concerned that they want to go to school. And it turns out going to school is actually a really good protective factor for staying HIV negative. So yeah, that I feel like that kind of sums up both the spaces that I work in, although I do work in actual health systems, but making sure that it's experts of a particular context are driving the process, and the actual goals are really important. Yeah.
That's so cool. And you guys, there's actually a story about how Molly and Mary Faith, you guys almost overlapped and collaborated at a conference a couple years ago before a certain virus derailed that effort.
Yeah, 2020, we were due to be in Miami together on a panel and it was canceled. Yeah, so the title was about non-static systems. Nothing is one way. And as we've discussed before, we don't have linear fixes for things either. We work within systems to understand them and the individuals within those systems. And so I think our panel was going to be about looking deeper into data within systems to see about individual, essentially change makers within systems, and how individuals are non-static and so are systems. So we did not get to do that panel, but we have the rest of our careers to once again do a panel.
Including tonight.
Yes.
And so incredible how that health piece and that education piece consistently overlap. And I love that. I think as a lay person not involved in your different sectors, it's interesting to hear, how much technical language is part of what you guys do, and how much is sort of going on behind the scenes in order to accomplish all this inspirational work. And Tom, I know that you were very instrumental in getting that Great American Outdoors Act passed in 2020. That was a really exciting time. I think a lot of us got to see some press on that and got to see your wonderful face in the news. What are you working on now that you're excited about?
So it's kind of late spring, and what happens at this time of year with Congress is appropriations. So advocating for a number of different pots of money is, a lot of what I do. And how I do it is, I'm kind of a quarterback, and I've got lobbyists in every state. So we try to get members onto appropriations letters and say that this program is important, so that when the appropriations committees make their decisions, hopefully the pots will be increasing. That's always been an issue for conservation, is that the proportion of conservation vis-a-vis the rest of the federal budget just keeps going down and down. And we've tried to advocate about how conservation is important kind of across sectors. I mean, we've got talk about intersectionality with health. I mean, if you look at the origins of the pandemic, it's likely that there are issues of loss of wild areas and keeping reservoirs from human contact. So we've got everything from health to recreation to complex kind of mineral and mining issues today. I don't know if you saw that the EPA just said that they weren't going to go forward with Bristol Bay up in Alaska. There's a proposed mine up there, but so a lot of what I do is kind of annual stuff, but then I've got kind of special bills that are going through, like Great American Outdoors Act. Those are more kind of, every 5 to 10 years where you get a big slug of money. And for us in the conservation community, it's a lot better to not go to Congress every year and argue, because I mean, that frankly gets old. And what we try to do is get pots of money that are recurring, so that we've got a permanent funding source. So that was kind of the brilliance of the Great American Outdoors Act, is that we've got 18.5 billion over 10 years and then 900 million forever after. So I don't have to go back and advocate for that pot of money. And so I'm trying to do a similar exercise right now for another pot of money of about 1.4 billion a year to go to state wildlife agencies. But then I'm also trying to look at how to pair it potentially with another conservation bill that would end tax fraud. So it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I'm unfortunately at the mercy of Congress, and our plans of what we try to do often, get upended by what a member of Congress or the administration wants to do. So a lot of what we have to do is kind of reacting to what folks are doing. So I'm working on a bill to prevent deforestation in Brazil with Majority Leader Hoyer. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. And thankfully, I've got a great team internally at TNC, and I work a lot in coalition. So a lot of what I do is just kind of keeping up with intel up on the Hill, but then really trying to figure out where, we can give our value add of, bringing an important person from within a state to talk to a member about how important it is. That's kind of what I do, is bring a lot of VIPs to do some of the lobbying for me. I used to think that I was a great lobbyist, and I realized that there are a lot of other people that can do a much better job than me. So a lot of what I do now is like identify who's, tight with whatever person, and then I educate them and put them in play.
I love that humility, Tom. But we all know that you're a very important man.
It's more like Will Ferrell, like I'm kind of a big deal, but not really.
Keep up the good work.
Will Ferrell is a big deal, so
in our household he is. How about you, Mary Faith? What are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Well, I mentioned Tajikistan, and that one excites me because we've got some new areas. We've done a lot of work in literacy, and we continue to do that work. But we also, on this project, we're working on math, so early grade math, so foundational skills, not only in reading, but in math. And we're also doing social emotional learning, and that's very interesting. We talked about how context, you have to, in this kind of work, you get steeped very quickly in context, including religions and languages and, issues that you've got to get up to speed on. And we just finished a data collection of weeks long in Tajikistan. And during that time, some issues broke out in Gabao, one of the regions where we're working. So we've been working through that, and that affects the staff in the field when there's conflict occurring and unrest occurring and crackdowns occurring and things. But it's inspiring to see. I mean, the main thing I've been thinking about the past few months is the people that we work with, and that includes my team that's actually all over the world. People that work with me that are part of the Ed Intersect team are everywhere. We have a core group of technical folks that work with us, and they live in many different countries. But then on each project we work on, we work with the field team there. And so they're not part of our Ed Intersect team, but they're part of the larger team of partners that work on the project, and the people are inspiring. And so anytime I kind of get down about, are we doing anything of worth, I go back to, it's the people and it's the connections and the relationships, and that's what's going to build change or build improvement, or meet some of the goals that all people have. Like, we know that when women, girls get educated, like Molly mentioned, I mean, for HIV, we know that if they get secondary education, they're at much lower risk of HIV infection. And we know that when women and girls get educated, the societies thrive. Not only the family, not only she herself thrives, but her family and her society. And so that continues to inspire me. I think that there have been gains on a macro level made on that, but there's still more to do. And during times of like COVID, a pandemic, or a conflict, marginalized groups like women and people with disabilities and other marginalized parts of different societies are going to have a greater impact. So how do we meet that? So that inspires me and pushes me to continue on and keep working. It's not an overnight fix. And I wanted to mention a couple other places we're working. We're working in Cape Verde, which is an island nation off the coast of West Africa. And that's an example of a shorter term evaluation we're doing, which is funded by the World Bank. And to me, like, the people there have been so inspiring, because, I mean, we're just there for a year working with them, with the Ministry of Education. And yet the relationships, the times that we've been able to be in the country and working together on tools and working together on training, again, it's inspiring to see. I learn. It's the learning that comes with the privilege of getting to work with these teams in other countries. So Molly, would that resonate with you as well?
And no, it absolutely does. Yeah, I definitely, the people are absolutely the highlight. I think I'm, a lot of my current work right now is one step removed from, really direct interaction with teams as much as I usually have been in, like, maybe before this year in my career. But I am still pretty excited about some things. I think, public health, I mean, just in terms of public health in general, although there's like a lot of things that are pretty, I guess, like, overwhelming and depressing, like in terms of, COVID, and then there's like monkeypox now, and, racism has recently been declared a public health crisis, which it is. As many challenges as I think there are, I'm also excited, Mary Faith, you mentioned learning. I feel like kind of personally excited about just sort of being in a place where I have lots of different experiences to draw, and I feel like I'm drawing on lots of different learning and continuing to learn, and try to apply things and look and see things differently, like look at different ways to kind of approach things. And I think this is part of like a momentum that there actually is, fortunately, in public health, just recognizing that the challenges right now are so complex, and in large part due to the climate crisis. And I'll let Tom talk about that. But, it's leading to like really extreme inequities. We've seen it grow over the course of the COVID pandemic. Even with gun violence, I have been, I'm sure as all of us have been devastated, every day, but recently, and I was looking at the disparities and even among children affected by gun violence, there's like massive racial disparities. So like there's lots of challenges, but I think there's a real momentum and willingness to look at things differently. And I think using generative approaches is something that I've been very excited about, like in combination with the more, public health approach, which is using like deductive reasoning. So generative approaches in like design thinking has kind of like become a popular thing, but I think it actually has a lot of promise. And I've been sort of trying to apply it in my own work and, in my company, but also in different kind of volunteer things in my community. I think there's a real potential, and I'm so glad that there's an interest and a momentum in addressing equity and approaching things differently and more inclusively. But Tom, I don't know if I mentioned the climate crisis, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think has changed, especially kind of in the conservation community, is, over the last couple of years with Black Lives Matter, and also kind of in conservation that some of you might not see as much, as kind of the importance of sovereign native tribes here in the United States. And we've been a big conservation organization. I mean, there's lots of complex history, of where and how our public lands came to be. And a lot of what I do is, I lobby for pots of money so that we can, as an organization, go out and buy from a private landowner that land, and then we get reimbursed by the state or federal government, and turn it into a park or a national forest or whatever. But if you go back 150 years, you realize that a lot of those lands were taken from sovereign nations, and there's just a horrid legacy that got us to our ownership patterns here in the United States. And we've really started to question ourselves over the last couple of years in a good way, where what is our role? How do we come in and empower tribes and more diverse audiences into the conversation about what the future of conservation should be? I mean, we're great at figuring out the science and implementing and putting things forward, but we also have to have support of local communities. And one of the things that's been super inspiring is we've actually bought land and we've given it back to tribes. We've got ranches that we manage kind of for demonstration purposes, and we raise bison, and bison are one of the emblematic animals of many tribes that were exterminated in the 1800s. And so we've actually been the last couple of years giving back bison to tribes to reestablish herds for the tribes. And we're really kind of figuring what our role is now in a very dynamic kind of social environment. Going back to kind of the start off of this kind of little line, we're facing a climate crisis. Obviously, we're facing a biodiversity crisis, and so it's been hard over, I'd say, the last 10 years, but really in the last kind of 5, or I mean, even since the onset of COVID, we're really talking about the intersection of a lot of these issues where, there in the conservation community, there's the climate folks and then there are the conservation folks. And now we actually are talking about it at the same time instead of separately, and like how protecting land is important for the climate crisis. And so, we, I think, have a long ways to go in terms of figuring out our role, but I think it's kind of a very cool, dynamic time to be rethinking this conservation field in, a period of important social upheaval, where we figure out how, we can play, in this kind of change that needs to happen. And it's not easy, but it's an important conversation and trajectory for us to go on.
So I'm hearing that collaboration is very important as we tackle all of these high priority items on our social agendas, right? So pivoting a little bit to the concept of service. Each of you are clearly engaging in service to the greater good in your career. So I'm curious about, how do you each define service? How important is the service component in your work in terms of your motivation and your sense of fulfillment in your careers? Does anyone want to tackle that?
I mean, I guess I would say, if I can answer for both of us, Molly, I won't make myself answer for you yet, but I think that we feel like, and we definitely credit Davidson with this, that we feel called to do mission-driven work, and we feel, I would say, privileged that we have found our pathway into places where we feel like we're carrying that out. And I think that, to care about the common good and be able to live out that care in your work, however imperfect it may be, it doesn't mean that what you do is perfect or that it's all fixed tightly and just so. But if caring about the common good doesn't matter, what does matter? I mean, what matters if not that? And so that's how I feel, and I think Tom feels about the work that we do. Molly, do you feel that way?
Yeah, no, that's totally well said. You can include me. I'll sign on to that, Mary Faith.
Okay.
I mean, I think I kind of see it like global citizens. I think because you touched on I think with international work, but it's not even just international, like any kind of work where you're like trying to, do something helpful. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's a challenge to like, just there might be kind of a power dynamic. So I think that's like that's a challenge that is particularly present in global work. It's a privilege to be in a position where you're choosing to help. I think that's like a huge privilege, and it's good to be aware of it and not because I don't know what somebody else needs or wants, or how, like I was saying earlier, what the outcome should be. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely something that is like driving the work, like caring for the common good, and it's such a challenge to figure out what that actually means in practice. One of the approaches I really found appealing is this mutual aid approach, and I feel like there's a lot of good that could be applied, in a lot of different ways, like globally, personally. But anyway, so where it's like we're all global citizens and we're all doing what we can, and I share this, you share that sort of thing. I kind of like
the term capacity partnering instead of capacity building.
Yeah.
And, always it's like, and you've mentioned system strengthening before, we talk about that, and we talk about capacity building sort of in tandem with that, but it's like, it's really capacity partnering. So the capacity of human beings, like each of us working together, rather than me doing something for your capacity,
Yeah, that's it. We all have something to offer, and I think we all have something to offer, and even intergenerationally, I feel like that's like a really important thing for the future, is looking at intergenerational collaboration and service. I don't know if you find that in your work, Tom, if this is like, since Mary Faith and I have now both spoken for you, if you might like to
I mean, it's funny, like I've got my kind of requirements of my job, where I'm trying to, we've got transactions that we've got to get in and out of, that we've got, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate that we've got to like process. And so, I've kind of got my day to day. And so, I mean, just kind of within my job, I've got, it's service, but it's funny that the role that I've been afforded with my job, I actually realize that there are places that I can influence that are like outside of what my job is. So like I mean, I've recruited a lot of congressional champions to be champions for international conservation, through USAID, through supporting some of the UN multilaterals that they just wouldn't otherwise be. And it's so easy for them to do. But, I mean, one thing, that, you get to know people, and you get to know people up on the Hill, and, there are just lots of opportunities that you don't realize what kind of these relationships can afford. One, I'll probably get kicked under the table, was January 6th. I knew Mark Meadows, and I texted him on January 6th and said, you need to, fix this. And, it's just kind of, there are things that we've all gotten, from where we are in our careers, that I think that we, these unexpected kind of, glimpses where you can actually, provide value beyond what your kind of description or what your even self idea of your work is. And, that to me is kind of the most rewarding stuff that I didn't see coming, that I could actually, make some sort of difference in something that, I didn't even realize was an opportunity for me to do. But, service, like, I mean, it's also tough because, I had gotten involved in local politics, and, we've had any number of different local challenges here in Scarborough, but and that's kind of a service, to my community. But it's also hard when you're kind of, I mean, it's just everything was lobbying all the time, everywhere, and like I also kind of had to take a break and say, I can't do this. Like I need to, I'm doing this, for a job, and I can't do it all the time on my spare time either, and I need to do other things to kind of broaden myself. So
Go biking.
That's right. Service to me.
Any other thoughts on service? I know it's definitely a guiding beacon in each of y'all's experience. I think it's interesting to think about.
Oh, is our connection bad?
We lost you, Mary. I see Molly moving. So
are we still
I
here?
see. I thought it was me.
I guess it's Mary's connection.
I mean, I think
Mary, there she is.
Now you're back.
Sorry.
Okay.
Are we all still on now?
Yeah.
I think we're still here. Yes.
Okay. So if you were advising a young person, what advice would you share with them about mapping out a career that, is fulfilling and serves the greater good, potentially, but mostly, how do you guys define fulfillment in your respective careers?
Well, Mary's making me think of what you had said before about the Ashoka change makers and the combating the decline of empathy. And I hadn't thought about the things that kind of came to mind for me as being that, but on a broader level, you pointed out they are. And so maybe that's a service that a Davidson education does for us. And that the people that made sure we got to Davidson afforded us. And some of the things that I had put down that I would say to a young person is, when a door opens or is cracked even just a bit, go through it. Learn another language, visit another country, visit a community unlike yours, class, culture, gender, a different place. And as you pointed out, those are the things that build empathy. And in the end, I think we've been trying to figure out, how did we get where we got and what would we change? And maybe we wouldn't change anything because we're here due to all those twists and turns we made. So it's the whole thing about, we're preparing for jobs that may be, jobs that aren't created yet. But what we're doing at a place like Davidson is we're learning to write, to think, to connect with people. And it's not just looking for big solutions, it's learning how to bring small changes to current and existing frameworks that could end up making a big difference. The recording's, oh, it just started again. But so I would say those are some of my specifics that I would offer up. And I don't know, Molly and Tom, what else you would say to those?
Well, I actually do, I mentor some young people, and they actually do ask me this a lot. I always am interested in how, and I'm sure, I think this isn't unusual. I don't know, I probably did the same thing, but like, there's the idea maybe, that, you know, when you're younger, that there's like a prescribed way to go. I mean, I think it's the point you're saying, Mary Faith, but I love the point about empathy, but and also that you know, the path is really like the one that you choose, and if you're like constantly learning, that you can actually make your own path. And I think personally, I think the challenges that we are going to be seeing from now until, you know, any young people that are looking at careers right now, like, it's not decided yet. Like, the careers there's new, you know, jobs that haven't been created yet. So the trick is really about like creative thinking and looking at things differently. Like, don't do what we did, like actually like look at a problem yourself. Like, does homelessness like really bother you? Like, figure out a different solution. Don't do what already exists. We need creative solutions. We need fresh thinking, and yeah, people that care. Coming back to Mary Faith's good point, well said. And also having people included. Old people are not just, you know, we're not to be discarded either. So 20 years from now, please don't discard us either. I think like including everyone and you know, in those fresh new ideas that people have, I think it's going to really be important. So that's what I tell young people that are asking about careers, is like, learn about what the challenges are, and you know, don't be afraid to like be a trailblazer, because we need that right now, really.
You know, and at the end of the day, it's all about community, right?
Absolutely.
So we're coming up on the end of the conversation. If we have questions, if we don't have questions from our participants, we can keep talking. Do I have a thumbs up on questions, or Grace? Thumbs up on questions, no questions? We can just keep talking then. And if you guys think of any questions and would like to put them into the chat, we will do our best to get them answered before we wrap up in about 15 minutes or so.
So one thing, since Mary Faith was talking for me, I'll kind of talk up a little bit. Advice I think for folks is to not listen to that inner voice of what you're supposed to do. I mean, I was an economics major because my dad was an economics major. My brothers were economics majors, and I was an economics major, and it was a disaster. I mean, it was terrible. And I realized that like at the end of my junior year, and I switched to biology, and I started pursuing like what I loved, and I did great in biology. And you know, I realized that I wasn't going to be a banker like my brothers were, and that I was, you know, going to chase this kind of perpendicular path that was not kind of, I mean, I was a biology major that went to law school. And so it's just kind of, and I mean, it was terrible. I went to law school and I didn't know how to write. I mean, it was like horrible, but, you know, I kind of had this idea of what and where to go. And, you know, I think that once you kind of stop listening to that kind of nagging idea of what you think others think you should be, is kind of when you get liberated enough to actually kind of pursue and become what you could. And I'm sure it probably gave Mary Faith and her parents, you know, lots of heartache over the years. They're like, what is he doing? But, you know, kind of all played out and worked out. And that's kind of what I would say for advice for people.
And we're so glad it worked out for you, Tom. You're a superstar. So, okay, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you guys now. What would your advice be to people our age? Okay, Molly, I don't refer to us as old yet. I just refer to us as middle-agers.
Nothing.
But we're on our way. We're on our way. So what would be y'all's advice to people at our stage in the game? We see all these concerning trends. What can we do? What can we do individually and collectively to engage and have an impact? Any thoughts?
I mean,
That's a big one.
I mean, it's somewhat like Tom was saying. I think you were talking about like the environmental, whatever that was called, the local. Anyway, when he was talking about local politics, what are your points of entry? Like where can you get involved with the time that you have and the position you're in your life, and on an issue that might really deeply affect you, not only, your community, but, you feel a passion for it, and get involved there. It's like I talked to my dad as I was preparing for this, and he reminded me of the responsible self of H. Richard Niebuhr. Like everything you do is really in response to a prior action. So it's like, where does, the responsible self, you're responding to something, and that doesn't mean that's where you're positioned. So do something there. And so I think like the local politics, when you have the time to get back engaged, so that you can save our Bowling Forest, which is the local issue he's talking about, get back engaged with it and connect with the people again. And probably each of you has something in your local community. And then, globally, I know we're all anguished about so many things, as we are in our own society, anguished about so many things. So, I mean, people give money to certain causes. That's another way to think about your impact. But, I don't know. I think if you can find a local issue that you can actually have an effect on through the relationships you have in your community. I mean, I would love to do that. I feel like I'm so busy going places and coming back and doing family things. And, I don't have that time to, sit on like the Carborough Town Council or something. Maybe Tom will do that. But yeah, I don't know. What do you all think about Molly?
I mean, I think for people our age, I'm on I do feel like there's a real strong ageism in society. And I think because I've been sort of concerned in health about stigma, and, I think there's a lot of isms that really poorly affect health. And I think ageism is one of them that is not really, everyone knows it's there kind of, but doesn't really take it that seriously. Most especially people who have a high age. And so I've just been like noticing a lot that, that just like with other forms of stigma, the people who perpetrate it heavily sometimes are the people who are most affected. So I think this is like a really good age to reframe that, and recognize that there's a lot of myths. There's a huge myth about that older employees are not as creative or don't learn. Like, these are actually myths. There's actually evidence that isn't true. And so as we are like kind of in between, like we're in the workforce, but we're not retired, and we have like some, kind of power and influence, we're in a good position to reframe that and like why are we even talking about like the term retirement? Why do we talk about retirement? That's like that means like by definition disengagement from society. Like just reframing like what it even means to grow old, either in the workforce or in the community. So like ways it might just be doing something different, like Mary Faith, you know, those great suggestions about like giving back. So yeah, I think those are things that I wish we would keep in mind, and how that intersects with other areas of like equity, where, you know, where we might be able to influence for the better of everyone.
Love it. We do have a question from the audience, from Maria Howell, class of 1991. She says, I'm curious to know, is there something that you have been working on that you feel like if it would just happen or pass or be completed, it would make a huge difference in the world? Great question.
For me, I mean, it's campaign finance reform. I mean, it's kind of not my issue, but it's so systemic in what our problems are. You know, I mean, I'm lucky that when Congress turns to dysfunction, frankly, a lot of my stuff goes through because it's some of the little things that they can agree on. But I think that we've got such big issues that are so exacerbated by, you know, our current approach on campaign finance. So like, I mean, it's just, it polarizes everything and everybody, and, you know, it just makes stuff grind to a halt. And I think that that's a big place where we could actually make a difference, and it would affect all sectors, at least domestically. And, you know, the United States too is so important. I mean, the tenor that we project internationally gets picked up. And I think that if we can kind of get around and beyond a lot of this hyper kind of not partisan, but just hyper talk about any issue and just start to look for common ground, you know, we could actually have a global effect. And, you know, we produce a lot of things that go overseas, and, you know, one of those things is kind of an attitude. And I think that if we can kind of reframe that by having a difference in our electoral system and get rid of some of that money that is really tearing us apart, it would make a huge difference.
Well said. Got another question from Melissa. What's something you all really love about your jobs? That's a good one. Molly, what do you really love about your job?
I love that I love that I get to work on things that matter to me, and I love that I get to both sort of use like a sort of analytic and creative thinking to address, you know, challenges. Yeah, it's really lucky to get to work on things that matter a lot to me.
Oh, so I will say one practical thing that I like is that I mean, we all look for balance and we never feel like we fully get it. It's the whole thing of I'm not doing this well enough and I'm not doing that well enough. But at the same time, the type of work that I do means that, you know, if I need to take care of a child who's sick or do something on a different schedule, I can, as long as, I mean, I'm working with people in different time zones too. So sometimes I'm up at 6 a.m. to get on calls, but my time, I can be in charge of my time and use it to attend to a lot of different things. And so that's like a practical piece of running my own enterprise that is good. On the other hand, you know, you're always on and you have to be on top of things, and there's not sometimes someone to tell to do something in some cases, but I like the flexibility that is built into the being an entrepreneur essentially, and being able to try to do the things right in front of me that I need to do that might be for my family or, you know, some immediate crisis, like, you know, with my parents, or, just, I like that flexibility. And I think that's an amazing element of, building yourself to this age and trying to have that as part of your day-to-day life. So I would say that.
I mean, one thing I'd say about kind of along those lines is the flexibility. I grew up kind of in a very traditional family where my dad was off at work a lot. And, I've been working from home for a long time. And, I get to spend time with Mary Faith and with our kids, which is, I get to see soccer games. And I think that just kind of this newest generation of work that's really kind of become accepted since COVID. I mean, I was kind of doing this before, but now everybody else is cool with it. And I don't have to work as hard, because I always felt that I had to work doubly hard because everybody always assumed that I wasn't doing stuff because I was working out of my house. But, I think that kind of this flexible approach that we now kind of seem to be in, and, what that affords for just kind of relational time with, your spouse or your kids is just a really incredible part that I love, in addition to, all the complexities that my job gives me as well.
Excellent. No more questions in the chat. Do you guys have any questions for each other? We've got about 2 minutes left.
So I see some faces that might have questions. You all don't have any.
I know. Are we going to call people that we see? I mean, come on.
I just think you guys are amazing, and I think that it's really just heartening to see people working with passion. So, thank you for working with passion. Thank you for having missions that you're willing to fight for, and it's the world's a better place for all of us because of you. So, last call for questions. Bright shiny faces on the Zoom. We appreciate everybody. Sorry, go ahead, Molly. Ooh.
Mary, I want to thank you. You have been amazing. Thank you. I want to make sure I get that in there. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mary,
Molly.
you are doing a really huge service to everything you're doing to get ready for this reunion. And you also have a very inspiring job as well. We need a panel with you on it.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Faith. I guess we're all inspiring each other, which is lovely. I do have one last question that just came in under the wire. Was there a class or a professor at Davidson who continues to inform you in your work and life? Love that. Any thoughts?
Dave Martin in the economics department, he did environmental economics, and it was kind of my bridge to kind of where and what I had gotten. He was just a really passionate guy, and I just really connected with kind of his approach, and it was, and I keep up with him, some, which is nice.
Nice.
I mean, I was a religion major, and I don't want to leave out any religion professor that I had.
So all of the religion professors who were at Davidson between 1988 and 1992.
Yes.
Awesome.
And we can't, hold on, before we go, we can't go without mentioning Dr. French, which is a classic.
Oh my gosh, Dr. French.
Naissance of our relationship.
Yes, the Classics Abroad seminar. I mean, that is a daily part of our life. There's not a day where we don't hark back to something from that trip that we're thinking of. And
that's terrific.
Dr. French, yes.
Great. Molly, any parting words?
I mean, if I didn't major in French, I probably wouldn't have, and go spend Davidson year abroad. I definitely would have had a completely different trajectory. So, yeah.
Yay, Davidson. We're all very grateful, of course. Thank you so much, Mary Faith, Tom, and Molly, for taking the time to speak with all of us this evening and leading us in this conversation. I also would like to extend a big thank you to the class of 1992 Reunion Committee for sponsoring this event. Do note that this event was recorded and will be available on the website in a week or so. Finally, thanks to all of you for joining us this evening, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their night.
Thank you.
Thank you.